We've seen this scene 1,000 times. A glowing Mary in blue robes, an elderly Joseph with a staff, a peaceful manger, angels, shepherds, the whole nativity package. But here's the problem. Almost everything in that picture, it's wrong. Not biblically wrong, traditionally wrong. The real Joseph and Mary were younger, braver, and their story was far more dangerous than our Christmas cards suggest. So let's burn the Renaissance paintings and rebuild this story from the ground up. Here are 5 things you believe about Jesus' parents that simply aren't true. But before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel to support us. Thank you. Lie number 1, they were just engaged. We love saying Mary was engaged to Joseph. It makes the virgin birth easier to explain. Boyfriend, girlfriend, surprise pregnancy, modern audiences get that. Except they weren't engaged, they were already married. Here's what Matthew actually writes. Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph. But that word, pledged, translates the Hebrew practice of kiddushin. And kiddushin wasn't engagement. It was the first stage of marriage itself. In first century Jewish law, marriage happened in 2 stages. First, kiddushin, the legal contract, the bride price paid, the vows exchanged. At this point, you were married, legally bound. Breaking it required divorce. The second stage, niswin, happened months later. The procession, the feast, the consummation. Mary and Joseph were at stage 1. Married in the eyes of God and law, just not living together yet. So when Matthew says Joseph considered divorcing her quietly, he wasn't breaking an engagement. He was dissolving a marriage. That changes everything. Lie number 2. Joseph was elderly. Blame the artists. Medieval painters loved this. Joseph as a gray-bearded grandfather, Mary as a young maiden. It solved theological problems, made the virgin birth seem more protected. But the Bible never says this, never hints at it. Here's what we actually know. Jewish marriage customs, men typically married in their late teens to early 20s. Women married younger, often 12 to 14. Joseph was a tekton, a builder working with stone and wood, not a profession for elderly men. The old Joseph theory comes from apocryphal texts written centuries later, pretty stories, not history. The real Joseph was likely 18 to 20, Mary 12 to 14, teenagers married facing a crisis that would break most adults. Not a grandfather and a maiden, 2 kids holding the fate of the world. Lie number 3. Joseph divorced Mary quietly because he was kind. We read Matthew 1:19 and think, what a gentleman. We picture a sensitive man sparing her feelings. But Joseph wasn't being nice. He was being tactical. Here's the law from Deuteronomy 22. If a man takes a wife and charges her with shameful conduct, they shall stone her to death with stones. Adultery meant death, publicly. Joseph's quiet divorce wasn't mercy. It was a legal maneuver. A divorce without cause, without accusation, without public trial. Mary would survive, but branded, shamed, cast out, but alive. And Matthew tells us Joseph planned this before the angel appeared, before he knew the divine explanation. Which means Joseph chose to absorb the shame himself, the ridicule, the whispered jokes, the social death, rather than let Mary face actual death. That's not kindness, that's courage. Lie number 4. They were a love story. We want this. We want to believe Mary and Joseph fell in love, built a life, raised Jesus together as a partnership of hearts. But first century marriage didn't work that way. Marriage was an economic transaction. Families negotiated bride price, dowry, clan alliances. Love, if it came later, through shared survival. Joseph and Mary didn't choose each other. Their families arranged it. They met perhaps a handful of times before kiddushin. They didn't date. They didn't get to know each other. And then, before they ever lived together, everything exploded. The pregnancy, the angel, the gossip, the flight to Egypt, the massacre of infants, living as refugees. They didn't get a honeymoon, they got a war zone. And somehow, through all of it, they built something real. Joseph named Jesus, legally claiming him as son. Mary stood at the cross decades later, still present, still believing. Whatever began as contract became covenant, but it started with duty, not romance. Lie number 5. Joseph was just a supporting character. We treat him like set dressing. The guy who gets Mary to Bethlehem, who finds the manger, who disappears after Luke 2. But Joseph is the only human father figure Jesus ever knew, and he never speaks, not once. In the entire Bible, Joseph of Nazareth has 0 recorded words. Think about that. Abraham argues with God, Moses gives speeches, David writes psalms. Joseph? Silence. But his actions scream. He obeys instantly, every angelic command, immediate compliance. He takes a pregnant wife when the law says stone her. He flees to Egypt when Herod hunts. He returns when it's safe. He teaches Jesus his trade, raises him in Torah, and then, gone. By Jesus' adulthood, Joseph is absent, dead, presumably, silenced permanently. The man who held the incarnate God as an infant, who taught the Creator to hold a hammer, who disappears without a word, a grave, a legacy beyond his obedience. That's not a supporting character. That's a man who understood his role was to disappear. So here's the real Joseph and Mary, not the serene statues, not the Christmas card fantasy. 2 teenagers, legally married, facing a scandal that could have killed them both. A young builder who chose shame over death for a wife he barely knew. A girl who said yes to a pregnancy that guaranteed her ostracism. A partnership built not on romance, but on shared danger, shared angels, shared survival. They didn't get the stable manger because they were poor. They got it because their world was violent, chaotic, and they were running for their lives. And they held it together, long enough to raise a child who changed everything. The next time you see the nativity, remember, the peace in that scene was earned. The silence of Joseph was loud. The courage of Mary was absolute. And the story we think we know, it's braver than we imagined. If this surprised you, subscribe. There's more biblical history that isn't what we were taught. Drop a comment. Which of these hit you hardest? I'll see you in the next one.